Good morning once again and Shabbat Shalom. It's a pleasure to welcome you back. This morning we have another opportunity to learn with our dear teacher, Rabbi Hillel Silverman. Good morning, Hillel. How are you?
Good morning, Rabbi. How are you? Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. So this morning is Lech Lecha, the beginning of the Jewish people. Abraham is called. Tell us what to look for in this parsha.
I'm very excited about this morning's Sedra. As a matter of fact, it's the most important Sedra of the whole year, to me at least, because it spells the origin of the Jewish people. Abraham is called by God to leave the home that he lives in and go to a new land and become the founder of a new people, of a new nation. Lech lecha, go out. God commands Abraham, leave, go out. And Lech lecha is the beginning of the Jewish people. It could have been just lech, go out. But the Bible tells us this morning, lecha, lech lecha. It's for you, Abraham. It's for your pleasure. It's for your benefit. Enter a new land and found a new people. It's for your personal benefit. Now, there are things in life that give us pleasure, but are not necessarily for our benefit. Then again, there are things that are for our benefit, but do not give us pleasure. Let's take some simple examples. Smoking may give people pleasure, but it certainly does not benefit an individual. On the other hand, when a person would like to lose weight and goes on a diet, it's not for his pleasure, but it's for his benefit. And God says to Abraham, Lech lecha me'artzecha, from your land, me maladetchecha, from your birthplace, umi beit abicha, and from the house of your family. These are three stages. One becomes more severe than the other. Not easy to leave your land. More difficult to leave the land in which you were born. But certainly most difficult is leave your family. And God says to Abraham, Lech lecha, go out, leave for your own benefit to a new nation, and I'll make you a great people, and you will be blessed. Now, our Midrash tells us that Abraham's father's occupation, profession, was an idol maker. He made idols, like may have had a store and sold idols. One day, the Midrash relates that Abraham's father said to him, I'm going to leave for a while, take care of the store. He left. Abraham said, I'm going to teach my father a lesson. And he took a stick and he broke every single idol in the store except one, the largest. And he placed the stick in the idol's hands. His father came back and was appalled. What happened? Abraham said, well, the angels all got into a controversial strike. They fought with each other, and this angel took the stick and broke in pieces every other idol. Abraham's father looked at him incredulously and said, Abraham, you know idols can't have a controversy. They don't talk. They don't fight. And Abraham said, well, then why do you worship the idols? This was the story of Abraham's environment. And God said to Abraham, go forth unto a new land, a new environment. And Abraham left the environment of idolatry and went to a new land. This was the year approximately of 2000 before the Common Era. That's 4,000 years ago. Let's talk about the history of Abraham's descendant until this day. After Abraham, as you know, came Isaac and Jacob and Joseph. The Jews lived in Egypt for 400 years. They were slaves. Moses came. He delivered the Jewish people. They crossed the Red Sea, and they entered the land of Canaan, the new land. And there was a period of judges, and after the judges came the monarchy. one of the early and one of the great kings was King David. We're talking about 3,000 years ago, the year 1000 before the Common Era. They built the first temple, and then in the year 585 BCE, before the Common Era, Babylonia put the temple aflame and destroyed the temple and exiled the Jews. And they went to Babylonia, which became Persia. And after 40 years or so, King Cyrus allowed the Jewish people to return to the land of Canaan. They built the second temple. It lasted about 500 years. And the second temple was destroyed by the Romans under Titus. The year now is 70. And from there, the Jews went into exile. What a story this is. They spread all over the world. They went to Rome. They went to Greece. They went to Spain. They went to all over Europe, Asia, Africa. And in many of these communities, temporarily, they thrived. They built thriving centers in Italy, in Europe, in Spain. But then again, they were persecuted and they were expelled from many of these centers. The Inquisition, the Crusades, the pogroms, the Nazi Holocaust. And then they began to return to Israel and to America. They went to Israel 2000 in the year 75 years ago. They never left, actually. They never left Israel. Today, they are a thriving community. Their population is 9.2 million people. And they have made peace years ago with Egypt and Jordan, now more recently with the Arab Emirates, with Bahrain, with Sudan, and soon will be hopefully making peace with all the other Arab countries in the vicinity. They came to the United States. They came to America. In a way, the United States was the second promised land. And they became very, very productive, and they produced great centers of Jewish education, religion, and learning. And today, they are a population in the United States, a small population of 6 million, 0.2% of the population, but very creative and very productive. They came to the United States years ago, over 200 years ago, during the Revolutionary War. There was Judah Benjamin, who was the financier of the American Revolution. And they were, again, in a handful. They trickled to the United States during the Civil War. But from the years 1881 until 1924, when the immigration law was changed, they came in hordes to the United States. They came afterwards from Germany. They trickled from Germany and from Russia. And they became a very, very blessed people. Lech lecha, leave your land, God said to Abraham 4,000 years ago, and look what the Jews have lived and look what they have accomplished. And then, of course, I would like to share with you my story. And my story in this country could be your story. All you have to do is change the name, change the date, change the profession, change the places. My grandfather, Olav Shalom, came to the United States in 1885. That's 135 years ago. He was 13 years old, that's all. And he came alone, like many in that time who lived in Russia. And he came from Slonim, Russia. There was the time of the Chatfonim, when the Russians would kidnap Jewish children and put them in the Russian army for 20, 30, 40 years ago. In order to avoid this, I imagine his parents put him on a ship, and he came to the lower east side. And he went into a tenement on Essex Street. I visited the tenement house on Essex Street. I wanted to see where he lived. I wanted to imagine how difficult and hard it was for him to come as a 13-year-old child, not knowing the language and not knowing the customs. And from there, he went to the Bronx. He had a very fine voice, and he studied at the Conservatory of Music in Boston. He wanted a musical career, perhaps an opera, but instead of being an Orthodox Jew, he became a cantor. And he served in congregations in New York, in Massachusetts, and Connecticut, and finally settled in Columbus for the last 29 years of his life. Unfortunately, after being in Columbus, Ohio for 29 years, one Sabbath morning walking home from the synagogue, he was killed by a truck. I still remember that. I was 10 years old. I remember my father answering the telephone call, and I heard him cry out, "No, no." I also remember that there was a donkey baseball game. What's a donkey baseball game? Baseball players playing on donkeys, and I was going to attend that game. And my father said, "No." He said, "I'm going to your grandfather's funeral, and you're not going to attend a donkey baseball game or any other kind of baseball game." Well, let's go on now to the second generation. My father, Morris, he had 5 siblings, and he was raised in Columbus. I guess I should first go and he was raised in Columbus, Ohio. He studied at Ohio State, Columbia University, Jewish Theological Seminary, and he became a rabbi. He served in one synagogue for 50 years, and he was a very fine synagogue, and he was very active in the community. And he also, in his spare time, was the editor of many prayer books and English prayer books, English translation, which are still used on high holidays and Sabbath in numerous conservative congregations throughout the world. God said to Abraham, "Lech lecha," and now comes my story. God said to my father, and then said to me. I was born and raised in Hartford, Connecticut. I went to Yale, to the Jewish Theological Seminary, the same seminary from which my father was graduated. I served in the Marines and in the Navy, and incidentally, my brother Arthur served also in the Marines in the battles of Iwo Jima and in Saipan. I served in 3 congregations: Dallas, Los Angeles, and Greenwich, Connecticut, over 65 years. And finally, I returned to Los Angeles. I was reunited with my family, with my 3 children and 7 grandchildren, all who have settled very beautifully. They are in business, they're physicians. I have a grandson who's a rabbi who attended the same seminary that his grandfather attended, and I attended, and he attended Jewish Theological Seminary. I have a son who's a prominent actor, daughter who's a doctor, another grandson who's a chaplain, children who are in business, and that's my story. But it's not only my story, it could be your story. All you have to do is change the date, change the places, change the university, change the professions, and we all started with nothing, and we worked, and we struggled, and we became successful. We took care, we built up our families, and we contributed to our communities. Now, let's talk for a moment about our country, the United States. There are 6 million Jews in the United States, and they have contributed tremendously to the growth and the flourishing of this country. There are only 2% of the population, and yet their numbers, achievements are unbelievable. Over the years, there have been Jewish senators, Jewish congressmen, Jewish mayors, Jewish cabinet ministers, Jewish secretaries of state, Jewish members of the Supreme Court, Jewish scientists, doctors, lawyers, physicians, athletes, actors, doctors, directors, actors, playwrights, businessmen, builders, generals, admirals, Nobel Prize winners. I could go on and on. I think it's interesting in this country that our president has a daughter who converted to the Jewish religion, who is Orthodox, and whose son-in-law is Orthodox, belongs to an Orthodox congregation, have a kosher home. Imagine, president's son, and attend a day school. Another president, Clinton, has a daughter who married a Jew. One of the vice presidential candidates today, Harris, is married to a Jew. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, also a symbol of what Jews have contributed to this country. When she passed away, she was in Washington, where she was viewed by millions of people and buried in the cemetery, the military cemetery. Lech lecha me'artzecha, as we read today in the Sedra. And God said to Abraham, go forth into a new land, and you will be a great people, and you will be a blessing wherever you live. This is Jewish history. And to me, this is a very, very remarkable history, when the Jewish people came to all these countries with nothing and accomplished so much in 4,000 years. We are a small people today in the United States, 6 million, only 2%, and yet we have contributed so much to the growth and prosperity of the United States. Let us never forget our stories, because my story is your story. Our grandparents and parents who came to this land with nothing and struggled and achieved were able to accomplish so much. I don't think there's a people in history that can claim what we can claim as descendants of our father Abraham. Lech lecha me'artzecha. Leave your land and go to a new land where you'll become a blessing, where you will achieve, where you will be blessed, and where you live, the people will be blessed. Let us never take for granted our fantastic, remarkable history. We should be so proud of our accomplishments and so proud of this land in which we live, of freedom and opportunity and justice. Let us never take for granted what this country offers us, life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness, as God says to us in our Sedra this morning. Lech lecha, go forth from this land and be a blessing. Amen. Shabbat shalom.
Amen, Rabbi. Thank you. Shabbat shalom. And thank you for your wonderful story, the story of your own family and your own achievements and the achievements of your children and their children and all of the achievements of those who have followed Abraham's example. Thank you, and a very good Shabbos to you and your family.
Thank you, and Shabbat shalom.